Ever stop to think about the unseen world, teeming with tiny organisms? Some are just passing through, but others, well, they can really cause trouble.
Hmm.
And all this is happening while our bodies are constantly, working to keep us safe. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because in this deep dive, we're going way beyond just naming diseases. We're going to explore the fascinating interactions between these microscopic invaders and the incredible, um, intricate defense system we call our immune system.
Exactly. Our journey today through these educational materials on human health isn't just about definitions, like you said.
Right.
We want to understand the fundamental how and why behind these interactions and what it really means for us, in terms of staying healthy. Think of it as getting the inside story on how your body deals with the microscopic world.
So the first question seems to be, what does it even mean to be healthy in the first place? It's got to be more than just not feeling sick, right?
That's absolutely right. Health is a really comprehensive idea. It's about complete well-being, not just physically, but mentally and socially too. It's a holistic view.
Okay.
And what's interesting is how many things can affect this balance. Our genes can play a role, obviously,
Sure.
but so can the constant threat of infections, and hugely importantly, our day-to-day choices.
Mm.
What we eat and drink, how much sleep we get, whether we exercise, even our habits.
It's kind of wild to think about how our understanding of health has changed over time. The sources mention this old idea, the good humor hypothesis.
Yes. What's fascinating about that historical perspective, which was, around for centuries, is how it tried to explain health and illness based on the balance of these four humors or fluids.
Right, like blood and phlegm.
Exactly. Blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. They link things like personality and even fevers to an excess or deficit of these things. It was, well, an early attempt to make sense of what they were seeing.
But then William Harvey came along and basically said, hold on a minute.
Precisely. Harvey's groundbreaking discovery of how blood actually circulates, throughout the body,
Hmm.
rather than just being produced and consumed, that was a major turning point.
Makes sense.
Plus, his use of the thermometer to show consistent body temperatures in people, regardless of these supposed humor imbalances, directly challenged and, well, ultimately disproved the old theory. It was a shift towards looking for actual physical evidence.
So if it's not about balancing fluids, what does keep us healthy? The sources give us a pretty practical list. Things we mostly know, but are good reminders.
Absolutely. And these are things we hear often because they're so fundamental.
Mm.
Eating a balanced diet gives our bodies the building blocks they need. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Maintaining personal hygiene, like washing hands, stops the spread of so many germs. Regular exercise and yoga is specifically mentioned as beneficial. Body and mind helps keep everything functioning well.
Right.
Being aware of different diseases, their signs, can lead to earlier action. Getting immunizations is like training our immune system in advance. And critically, things like proper waste disposal and controlling disease-carrying insects and animals, plus making sure our food and water are clean. These are vital on a community level.
Now let's flip the coin. What exactly is a disease? It's more than just feeling a bit off, isn't it?
Exactly. A disease is really defined as any condition that negatively affects how our body's organs or systems function. It's a departure from our normal, healthy state.
Okay.
And it usually comes with specific signs and symptoms that we can observe or feel. Think of it as something disrupting the smooth operation of our internal machinery.
And the sources helpfully break down diseases into different categories. That seems useful.
Yes, the big division is between infectious diseases, which can be passed from one person to another. You might also hear them called communicable diseases.
Got it.
These are caused by tiny invaders called pathogens, which can even include parasites, things that live off another organism. Then we have non-infectious diseases, which, as the name suggests, can't be transmitted between people.
Okay, so let's zoom in on those infectious diseases, the ones caused by these microscopic troublemakers. We've got quite a few examples listed here.
Yeah, and what's striking is just how many different types of these pathogens there are. We're talking bacteria, like the ones that cause strep throat,
Mm-hmm.
viruses like the flu virus, fungi, which can cause things like athlete's foot, protozoans, these single-celled organisms causing malaria, and helminths, which are parasitic worms. Each has its own way of getting into our bodies and causing problems.
Let's start with typhoid. It sounds particularly unpleasant.
Yeah, it is a serious bacterial infection caused by Salmonella typhi. The main way it spreads is through contaminated food and water.
Okay.
Once someone ingests these bacteria, they can multiply and spread throughout the body, including the bloodstream. Key signs are a sustained high fever, often quite debilitating,
Hmm.
along with headache, feeling very weak, stomach pain, sometimes constipation, loss of appetite, and in really severe cases, it can even damage the intestines, potentially fatal complications.
And there's that infamous historical figure linked to Typhoid Mary. I remember hearing about her.
Ah, yes, Mary Mallon, famously known as Typhoid Mary. She was a cook who unknowingly carried Salmonella typhi, but never showed symptoms herself.
Wow.
Sadly, she continued to spread the disease to many people through the food she prepared. Her story really highlights how people can be carriers of a disease without even knowing it. Makes control really complex.
So how do doctors actually figure out if someone has typhoid?
Well, diagnosing typhoid usually involves looking for the Salmonella typhi bacteria in samples like blood, stool, or urine. There's also a specific blood test, the Weidel test.
Weidel test.
Yeah, it looks for antibodies, these special proteins our body makes to fight off the bacteria. If these specific antibodies, known as O and H antibodies, are present, it can indicate a typhoid infection.
Moving on to another lung issue, we have pneumonia. That's pretty common too.
Pneumonia is an infection affecting the lungs, specifically those tiny air sacs, the alveoli. In pneumonia, these sacs can fill up with fluid and pus, making breathing difficult. Our sources point to common bacteria like Streptococcus pneumonia and Haemophilus influenza as frequent causes.
And how does that spread?
Usually when someone inhales tiny droplets or aerosols that an infected person releases when they cough or sneeze.
And the symptoms are pretty much what you'd expect with a problem in the lungs.
Exactly. The main issues are respiratory difficulty breathing, often a cough that produces phlegm, along with fever, chills, headache. In more serious cases, you might even notice a bluish tint to the fingernails.
Oh, wow. That's a sign the body isn't getting enough oxygen, right?
Precisely, a serious sign.
Then there's ringworm, which the name makes you think involves worms, but you mentioned earlier that's not the case.
That's a common misunderstanding, yeah. Ringworm is actually a fungal infection caused by a group of fungi with names like Microsporum, Trichophyton, Epidermophyton.
Okay, so how do you get it?
People usually get it through direct contact with contaminated soil or by sharing moist, warm objects like towels that might be harboring the fungi.
And where does it typically show up?
It can appear in various places, but the sources specifically mention the groin area and the spaces between the toes as common spots.
Ah, like athlete's foot.
Exactly. That's a form of ringworm. The telltale signs are dry, scaly patches, often ring-shaped, and usually very itchy.
Next, we've got malaria, a disease we hear a lot about, especially in tropical areas.
Malaria is a very serious illness, potentially fatal. It's spread to humans through the bite of infected female Anopheles mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes again?
Yep. The actual culprits are tiny parasites called protozoans from the Plasmodium genus. There are different species, like P. vivax, P. malaria, and the particularly dangerous P. falciparum.
What are the key signs that someone might have malaria? What should you look out for?
The classic symptom is recurring episodes of chills followed by a high fever. And these episodes tend to happen in cycles, maybe every 3 to 4 days, depending on the specific Plasmodium species.
Why the site?
It's linked to the release of a toxic substance called hemozoin. This toxin is a byproduct when the Plasmodium parasites multiply inside our red blood cells and then burst out.
Wow.
It's also important to remember the parasite has a complex life cycle needing two hosts, humans and the mosquito.
Switching from mosquitoes to houseflies, now we have amoebiasis.
Amoebiasis, or amoebic dysentery, is an intestinal infection caused by a single-celled parasite, Entamoeba histolytica.
And houseflies are involved.
The sources point out that houseflies can act like mechanical carriers. They pick up parasites from feces and then contaminate our food and water. So ingesting contaminated food or water is the main way it spreads.
Nasty. And what symptoms come with amoebiasis?
Common signs include constipation, abdominal pain, and stools that contain an unusual amount of mucus and maybe even blood clots.
Our list also includes ascariasis, which, unlike ringworm, does involve actual worms.
Yes, ascariasis is an intestinal infection caused by parasitic roundworms from the Ascaris genus.
And how do people get that?
By swallowing soil, water, or food that's been contaminated with feces containing Ascaris eggs. Again, hygiene is key.
What kind of health problems can these worms cause inside you?
Inside the body, they can lead to internal bleeding, muscle pain, fever, anemia, and in more severe cases, they can actually grow large enough to block internal passages.
Oh, that sounds awful. Then there's filariasis, another worm disease.
Filariasis is caused by thread-like parasitic worms, specifically Wuchereria bancrofti and W. malay. These are transmitted through the bite of infected female Culex mosquitoes.
Different mosquito this time.
Different mosquito, yeah. What's particularly concerning about filariasis is that the worms can live in the lymphatic system for years, causing chronic inflammation.
And that leads to...
This long-term inflammation can lead to the dramatic swelling and disfigurement of limbs and even the genital organs. It's a condition known as elephantiasis, really debilitating.
Shifting to something, well, much more common, we have the common cold.
Ah, yes, the common cold.
Yeah.
A very widespread viral infection affecting the upper respiratory tract, nose, and throat mostly.
And it's caused by lots of different viruses.
A whole variety. Yeah, unlike the flu, which is more specific.
Right.
But rhinoviruses are among the most common culprits. It spreads incredibly easily through airborne droplets from coughs or sneezes, or by touching contaminated surfaces, then your face.
We all know the feeling of a cold, but what are the sort of textbook main symptoms?
Typical symptoms are a stuffy or runny nose, maybe some fever, a headache, sore throat, coughing, feeling generally tired, sometimes a hoarse voice, usually mild, clears up in a week or two, thankfully.
Dengue fever is another mosquito-borne illness that makes our list sound serious.
Dengue is a viral disease transmitted by Aedes mosquitoes, particularly Aedes aegypti. The viruses responsible belong to the Flaviviridae family, same family as yellow fever and West Nile viruses.
Okay, and humans are the main source.
Humans are the main reservoir, yeah. And the Aedes mosquito is the essential carrier, the vector.
What are the telltale signs someone might have dengue?
Dengue often starts suddenly. High fever, severe headache, pain behind the eyes, sometimes a skin rash, and in some cases, minor bleeding.
And last, from our initial list, is chikungunya, another mosquito one.
Yes, another viral disease spread by mosquitoes, primarily Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus. The chikungunya virus, or CHIKV, causes it.
What makes chikungunya stand out from, say, dengue?
While it shares some symptoms, chikungunya is really known for the sudden onset of fever and very severe joint pain, often with swelling in the joints.
That sounds painful.
Extremely. Other symptoms can include muscle pain, headache, nausea, fatigue, and a rash. But that joint pain can be quite persistent. It's a real hallmark of the disease.
It's almost overwhelming thinking about all the different ways these tiny organisms can impact our health. And it sounds like our list is just scratching the surface.
That's absolutely right. We've only touched on some of the more commonly known ones. There are so many others. Parasitic diseases like babesiosis from ticks, sleeping sickness from the tsetse fly, leishmaniasis from sandflies,
Wow.
then other viruses like smallpox, rabies, mumps, bacteria causing botulism, diphtheria, plague, whooping cough, leprosy, dysentery.
And STDs.
Can't forget sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis, gonorrhea, candidiasis. And interestingly, the sources even mention red sickness or pellagra, which isn't an infection at all, it's a vitamin B3 deficiency. Just shows illness has many causes.
So, with all these potential threats out there, how do we actually protect ourselves? Prevention seems absolutely vital.
It's our first and most crucial line of defense, definitely. Our sources emphasize both personal actions and community-level efforts.
Okay, like what?
On a personal level, simple things make a huge difference. Keeping our bodies clean, regular washing, using clean drinking water, washing food thoroughly,
Basic stuff, but important.
critically important. And on a public health level, proper disposal of human waste is essential to prevent many diseases. Maintaining hygiene where food is prepared for the public, regularly cleaning and disinfecting water sources, all vital.
What about those diseases that spread through the air, like colds and flu?
For airborne diseases, besides good general hygiene, avoiding close contact with sick people and their personal items is a key way to reduce transmission.
And for the diseases spread by insects, like the mosquitoes we talked about, for malaria, dengue, chikungunya, what can we do there?
For these vector-borne diseases, controlling the insect populations is paramount. This means getting rid of stagnant water where mosquitoes breed.
Right, like in old tires or pots.
Exactly. Regularly cleaning water coolers, using mosquito nets, introducing fish that eat larvae into ponds, spraying insecticides where needed, and using screens on doors and windows all help keep them out.
And of course, we can't talk about preventing infectious diseases without mentioning vaccines. They've had a massive impact, haven't they?
Absolutely transformative.